Alright, so a friend of mine from work lent me his amp to see if I can repair this thing. This is a real deal. It's an old tube amp. I'm not real familiar with the brand, honestly. I don't know if that's high end, low end. This baby looks like it's had some use. It's got a lot of rust, got a lot of dirt on it. The back here, you can see this is really tore up. It's probably seen some type of water damage of some sort, or maybe just some being pushed in and out of the trunk, something. And on the front side of this beast, it's missing the protective grill. And I'm going to turn this up here. And this speaker's had some silicone slapped on it because it had a tear in it at one point. So it's not like, you know, if it does have vintage value, it's lost it because it's not in a great shape. But that doesn't mean we can't be careful about how we repair it and what we go about doing. We'll look at what's going on. I got my bass guitar from upstairs, and I have not even attempted to fire this up. The first thing I did was kind of look it over, and I highly doubt that this is the plug that came with it. But if you can see that, let me see if I can get close here. It's just, the conductors are just kind of hanging out there. And that's not real zesty. I doubt that's what it came with. But we'll plug it in. When you plug it in, those terminals are covered up depending on the outlet. And I'm not real excited about that, but it'll work. So I'm going to plug it into the cabinet. This is all the tubers in the back here. So we've got a bunch of tubes. 3 smaller tubes, 2 relatively large tubes. The 2 large tubes do not seem to be matched in any way. One is quite a bit bigger than the other. I'm trying to see if they're markings. They look like the same marking as, I can't read it very well. 6-1 something. The other one starts the same way. The smaller tubes, 12 AU7, 12 AX7, and another 12 AU7. And this one looks a little crispy. This one can barely see through it. The other 2, you've got a good picture through them, but that one is pretty crispy. So we're going to plug it in. Hopefully nothing blows up, and we'll see. Alright, got her plugged in. No sparks, that's good. So now we'll you got like a standby mode, off, standby, and on this guy. Standby should start warming up our tubes. We do have a power light, that's good. That means the fuse is okay. I've got 3 lit tubes. The 2 larger tubes are lit. These 2 smaller tubes are lit. That guy, the one that I was suspecting with all the crud in it, doesn't look like he's lit. Well, if you listen real carefully, you can hear it warm up a little bit. So we'll see. That's standby. Go over to the on mode. Let's see. Yeah, I got a bad tube. I'm gonna keep it in standby for a moment. Plug in my guitar and see if we get anything out. It's got 3 inputs, like bass, high, low. I don't understand why they have a low and a bass, but everyone's got their own way of doing it, I guess. Treble, bass, volume. Deep and sharp. I don't know what, I really don't know what these settings do, but we'll figure out if it's working or not. Alright, switcher on. Yes, nothing happening in there. Nothing happening at all. That's it. Full volume. So the little tube that's not working in the back might be the very first one in line to start amplification, because it's not giving anything. Let's try some other settings. Try another input. Try a low input. And we have to open her up. Alright, turn her off. We gotta open her up. As always, unplug. I'm gonna get rid of the bass cabinet. I'm gonna pull you guys around to the back so you can see. So there's typically quite a bit going on inside of these tube amps. Are simpler than electronic amps of today. So we're dealing with big tubes, which basically they're in the place of, or I should say, MOSFETs are in the place of the tubes now. So MOSFET's just a little chip-looking thing, whereas these are a big vacuum tube. They're kind of fun because they light up and they give a nice, warm, rich tone when you're playing. So guys really geek out on these tube amps. We'll see if... Usually you've got like input stages and then output stages. And so as the power comes in, you know, it might be coming in through these smaller tubes, and then these two big Mamba Jambas are really stepping the power up to put it out. This is a 100 watt, I think my friend said. It's a 100 watt amp, which is a freaking lot of power. And so we'll open this up. We're going to be real careful because we just had it plugged in. And one thing I do is when I unplug an amp, you just kind of leave it, the on switch, if you have it, it's got these two positions. So it's got on and then standby. And if you leave it in on, it should drain down any of the caps that are in there just off, just the resistance through the circuits, and even just me touching this allows some of the energy to kind of come through. You know, it's not. I think a lot of people get really worried about the electronics inside these cabinets, specifically the capacitors. And I've had a lot of comments about those, and I just don't find them to be that hard to deal with. If you did get shocked, you know, that'll teach you not to touch that. Don't let it stop you from doing something. Just learn about it and be careful. Inside we've got this big transformer, and we've got this smaller transformer. Usually what happens, power comes in, here's the power cord, comes in here, gets transformed for the first time, because you don't necessarily need to run 100 amps or whatever through this. Ooh, that says 200 watts, 200 watt rating. That's even more of a beast. So you transform it, and also can clean that power up from the power company. And you come through, and this will be like a second stage transformer. Sometimes they're real high voltage. The tubes need some pretty ridiculous voltages to work correctly without much trouble. Be careful to pull this guy out. Just slow and steady wins the race. But this is the guy that wasn't lighting up. We have to find out which wires are the heating circuit inside there. There's a little. The reason they glow is they've got a little heater in there. Britain 12AU7. That's kind of interesting. And these are definitely, this is two different tubes, two different manufacturers. So it's already had some tube swaps, which is good for me because that means I don't have to be super careful with them. They're not, it's not like this is all original or something like that. So, oh, I see what that is. Yeah, that's not a burnout problem. There's a little process. They heat a little guy up in there, and I can't quite remember what it does, but it releases some gas. Like, it's basically why the tops of this is all like, looks like mirror finish, and there's a little ring under there, and that ring is made of something. I'll link a video in the description. It's a guy who makes these by hand, but he essentially gets them all together, pulls a vacuum, and then he heats that up with a induction heater. And I can't remember what that does, but it basically gets, I believe it gets rid of any oxygen inside the tube. So you kind of, it's sacrificial. So you allow the oxygen in the tube to oxidize that piece that's not important. And that way, the rest of your components, when you turn them on and they get hot, they don't oxidize. It's kind of a cheater way to get rid of the oxygen in the tube by. Man, that's a lot of tube. Yeah, that's what it is. That's not burning. That's the sacrificial little ring there. It's underneath that one. And there's another ring right under here. I guess the big tubes need a little bit more than the small ones. These rings are in the top on this one, the top on that one, and it's on the side here in that one. So maybe they're okay, but this tube isn't lighting up. We need to figure out if it's the heating circuit in that tube, which is that's where I'm going to go first, or it might be the circuitry in the amp. But honestly, these circuits are so brutally simple, it's really not worth opening them up most of the time, because you can find what's wrong if you've got some tubes that aren't lighting up or something's not going on. Don't dig deep into an amp before you cover all your bases. The easy stuff first. There's no reason to open up. And even now, I'm going to plug these back in. Sometimes just plugging and unplugging will clean these ends up enough. You'll get it working again. And you got to be careful with these little guys. They're robust, but if you were to drop it on concrete, it's going to break, and you're going to need a new tube. And when you're pushing them back in, make sure you're lined up. And I just kind of give a little wiggle and get them back in. We'll plug it in. We'll see if anything changed. I'll leave this camera on the tubes here. Yeah, plug her in. Let's see what we get. Well, I got a light in that one now. Maybe that's just what the doctor ordered. Now this one's lit. You can't see it from the front there. From this angle, you might not be able to see that. Shoot, yeah, we're going to try that again. Hey! So, ooh, a little crunchy in there. This is probably killing that microphone, so I'm sorry for that. But I'm excited that it's working. That was about the easiest possible fix I think you could ever have, is just wiggling a tube. It really doesn't give you any highs. I'm going to go switch it to high. See what we get. You can really hear that paper cone getting shredded. Yeah, she's starting to warm up now. It takes a minute. Those tubes are big. A lot of space. That went really well. I can't believe that was the fix. Wonder if the tube. I'm assuming it was just that little guy. He might still have a bad filament in him, but you know, if it works, it works. I'm not gonna. I can tell my friend that if it stops working, we'll just put some new tubes on it. But that was certainly easy enough, eh? Worst case, get a new tube. That tube seems to be working now. I'm not gonna dig any deeper. That's it'd be silly to go digging into an amp that works that well. So there we go. Another amp repaired. I was hoping it'd be more intense than that, quite honestly. I like it when we gotta go digging around, but didn't have to do any of that. It's becoming a theme. Big old bass cabinet.